Hey guys, it's Jay. Welcome to the Walk With Me podcast series. I'm so excited for our conversation today. I want to talk about change, connecting all parts of yourself when you're going through change. But first, I just want to thank you for those of you who have subscribed and left reviews and send me notes on the blog on JeannineYoder.com. I love hearing about your experience on our walks together, and I love seeing your pictures of where you're walking, and I especially love your feedback. I'm so happy that you don't think I'm crazy for all the personal things I share in these episodes, and that you don't mind hearing the waves in the background and the sounds. And I've heard from some of you that it's even refreshing to have something different in a podcast, not so professional, not so clean edited, but more real and raw. So welcome. I hope you've got your shoes on and you're ready to walk. I'm already out walking. It's a little windy today on the beach. I'm out on the water. And I'm going to get pretty vulnerable today, as in the last episodes. What I want to share, if you're new and this is your first episode, or you haven't listened to the first 6 in this series, is I am sharing personal things, and my intention is that you know that I'm sharing high-level mastery techniques as we go through this. And today's a really life-changing one. After being a coach for 10 years and running my life coach training program, Mentor Masterclass, for 6-7 years now, I'm really trying to bring these high-level mastery mind techniques that I use in my life and teach my clients, so that you get more resourceful on our walks, so that you have space to receive coaching in the way that I give myself coaching from my own techniques, or coaching that I've received from hiring many mentors along the road and from training people to become coaches. If you're interested in becoming a coach, or you're already a coach, a lot of these techniques that we explore through just intimate conversation are going to make you more masterful and confident as a coach too. So if you're listening, that's why my story and rambling should matter. And I think we learn best when we can personalize. So that's why I hold myself accountable to sharing personal stories and how these kind of techniques that we use as coaches and healers can be applied to tangible real life situations. So if you've been listening along, in episode 1 and 2, we talked a lot about human needs and really what to focus on in your life, and really who you are, what your values and priorities are. And in episode 4, I got into the Disney strategy, which was a really cool episode about how we take big dreams and start to make them real. And in episode 5, we had Erin Stetland come along, and I was pretty vocal, as was she, about the change that I'm going through, why the Walk With Me series, Movement in Your Body Creates Movement in Your Life. We dug into change and growth. And then in the last episode, I talked a lot about resistance. Anytime we're going through a big change or going after a new creative adventure, that resistance shows up. And today, I want to talk about that change more specifically, and how we can be supported when we're going through changes. So I pulled a card this morning. I love to pull oracle cards because, if you can't tell, I've done a lot of work in my life around mindset and understanding our brains and how they work, and why our mindset and our beliefs and focuses matter in the experience that we have. And to pair with that, I've learned that we can't just rely on our mind. We have to rely on our soul. We have to allow intuition and deeper divine guidance to come into our lives, because our mind can't solve all the problems. And there's such greater magic available to us. And as I've learned this, that's what's really driven me toward becoming a feminine leadership coach, because as women, I've learned that we're taught to be successful, to be productive, to succeed. A lot of it is felt like we need to rely on our mind. And what I've learned is that's couldn't be further from the truth. We need a fine balance between our mind and our human experience, and also access to intuition, magic, soul, things greater than ourselves, a more holistic approach to life, solving problems, and becoming whole. And so one way that I do that is through doing rituals and incorporating practices that invite my intuition on board. And one of my favorite practices is oracle decks. I have like 20 oracle decks. And it's been a sweet little thing in my life where I get awesome messages. And also where when I'm not exactly sure what's going on, just a little bit of divine guidance on where to focus, what I can focus on. And so I pulled a card today, and the card came from one of my favorite new oracle decks called the Mystical Shaman Oracle. And the card was called Many Paths. And sometimes I like to read the book definition that the oracle card gives, and sometimes I just like to look at the picture and allow my own intuitive voice and guides to speak through and share with me what the invitation is. So the essence of this, which has inspired our conversation on our walk today, is this idea that all paths lead to spirit, lead back to our soul essence, lead back to our unique purpose. And what you bring to your journey is what will determine if your path is a path of suffering, or is a path of wisdom, or is a path of bliss, or a path of loss. And I was thinking of a story, and actually I did read this part in the Oracle book where they talked about considering a traveler along the road who meets two stonemasons. Okay, and so he asks one stonemason what he's doing, and the stonemason replies, "I'm squaring out this stone." And he asks the other, who's doing, by the way, the exact same thing, and he gets the reply, "I'm building a cathedral." So what you can notice in that is that one man has a job and the other man has found his work and his calling. And he's part of an endeavor that's much greater than himself. And I feel like the essence of that story coming through just speaks to me so much, because the change that I'm going through right now is I'm having there's one part of me that has always been a visioner, a manifester, really growth-oriented, set huge goals and gone after them. And is really about the greater vision. Much like if I was that stonemason in the past, if you asked me, what are you doing? I would say, going after this huge goal. I would say, building the cathedral. And there's another part of me that's intuitively being guided to be more in the moment, to be more simple, to be more aware of what's happening right now. And in some form, even reading this card, I'm coming across a conflict because, and it could be my lensing of the world, or it could be, again, the struggle that I'm going through with changing and the identity change I'm going through, of trying to honor this intuition and this part of me that's being guided to simplify my life, and that's being guided to be more in the moment and to be less about growth and plans and more about pleasure and experience. And the invitation of this oracle card, intuitively, what it was saying, again, the card was many paths. The invitation in the card was that right now my call is to take a big, bold step and leave the beaten path. And heaven and earth are conspiring on my behalf to support me in this move. And the invitation and the note is saying, do not dally and miss the moment and it's saying it's time to sail into the uncharted and to be sure that I attend to both my path on this earth as well as my path through the stars. And the medicine that I'm taking from this is that I've really outgrown my current situation. I've outgrown the way I ran my business. I've outgrown the way I set goals. I've outgrown so much about my life, and I risk losing my way in my own backyard if I don't follow the calling to step out of my comfort zone and respond now while the call is a gentle whisper. And it's like this feeling like even though the woods feel kind of thick and impenetrable, venturing in and letting nature guide my steps through the dark will help me to reach my destination. And I need to remember that if I don't know where I'm going, it doesn't matter because any path will take me there. Remembering the essence is that all paths lead to spirit. So I'm really taking this in, and also I can feel the part of my identity that's confused by this. So maybe you'll have some reflections for me from your own intuition after you listen to this. Because I'm feeling like this is saying, have a greater vision, be more like the stonemason that is building the cathedral, while the thing that is actually shifting for me, or the new path that I'm called to take, is about not working that way. So immediately, of course, what pops up for me, because I love pairing my intuition and that greater wisdom with understanding my human mind and what's actually going on with it, so I can feel stable. And I thought about an NLP technique that I use with my clients that helps them to connect all parts of themselves during change. Because I've learned, being a coach and healer for women, that whenever I hear women say, there's part of me that wants this and a part of me that wants this, it's actually amazing, momentous material to work with and an incredible time in their life. And so, part of me wants to be in the moment now and have this simple life that allows me to focus on pleasure, while the other part of me really has this greater vision and this desire for constant expansive growth, a part of me that wants to be famous and an innovator and serve millions, while this other part of me wants to have a quiet, simple, profoundly pleasurable and intimate life. And so I look at the ways that I can identify and integrate these conflicting parts. Whenever I hear clients go through this, that's the technique I use. So I thought, okay, it's time for me to use this technique on myself. And I want to go through this conversation with you and teach it to you today, in case you're having anything in your life where it's like, part of me wants this and part of me wants this. So think about that for a moment. What is that? What are those conflicting parts? Because if I can help myself and you, from experience, helping many women do this, move safely through transitions and overcome those conflicting parts and tap into new resources, we can start to feel like we are creating the path that's, like I said from the oracle, not one of suffering, not one of challenge, but one of grace and ease, right? And that all paths lead back to spirit and purpose, but how we experience that path is our choice. And I think that's when our mind and human focus comes into play. Because in life, we split ourselves into many parts. Some of the splitting happens within our conscious awareness, like perhaps you already know a part of you likes challenge, and yet you may be less aware that another part of you gets really troubled by conflict. And it's until this part of you becomes problematic because you don't like giving bad news, for example, that you start to split yourself. So splitting off part of yourself to the point where you start to ignore that part that isn't successful. And danger lies in not honoring the value that one part contributes to the whole. So as a coach, I'm always trying to encourage my clients and myself to accept my whole self without judgment, and to acknowledge the disconnect between different parts as I'm working to find my sense of identity, or allow myself to change identities and go through to get to the other side of my fullness and wholeness. And I know that our progress, yours, mine, my clients, is only available if we work to accept all parts of ourselves without judgment. So that's why when I pulled this card today and I noticed there's judgment lingering about these two parts of myself and one being better than the other, and there's general conflict about which way is right, that I knew I needed to enlist this in my walk today, this reflection around these conflicting parts. So, NLP, neuro-linguistics programming, suggests that these parts of ourselves are non-integrated fragments of our whole mind. And each has its own purpose and function and presents different intentions that show up in our behavior. And often these different fragmented parts appear as if they're involuntary. Like you might kind of hear yourself say, or I've heard my clients say this a lot when they're going through this, I don't know what came over me, or that's not me talking. And it's like a part of us takes on the identity of a disapproving parent, as in like, oh, that's just like my upbringing talking, or that's like my pattern from my mom. And each part is likely to have its own beliefs and value system. And parts bring trouble when the behavior of one part doesn't match up with or is out of alignment with the desirable behavior or the desirable way you want to be feeling. And our parts often split off as a result of some kind of significant emotional experience that we've had. And so I think for me, this is probably one that's been happening along the way with building my business and becoming a mom, and just realizing like my business I love, but it's not my only baby anymore. And that's when my part split off. And then it was amplified a few months ago when my mother died, and I really faced that knowing that we all face when we're going through grief or loss like that, of how we never know how much time we have and how valuable life is. And so I think my part split off even more at that point. And also there's been some changes just in marketing in general in the entrepreneur world that are asking entrepreneurs, women healers, coaches, bloggers, influencers to create innovative ways of marketing because the old ways are not working anymore. And so all of this has triggered these kind of conflicting parts. And so it's time to create ways to be supported through this change. And I have been struggling, as you've heard in podcasts previous, and now change is so funny to me. It's like part of me just wants to hold on to that what feels like simple life is when you've put the work in and things just keep working. So change, to have to innovate, it's like I love that and I thrive. Again, part of me wants that, and another part of me feels threatened by it. So I try to imagine how life would be without change. Everything would be predictable and under control, but nothing would be fresh or new either. And most significantly, no growth would happen. And I kind of think about like a Peter Pan type existence, another Disney reference, here we go. Like Neverland's like this idyllic world where you just never have to grow up and face change. But we have to grow up and face change at points in our life and our work if we're going to ever become adults. And some changes are welcome, and others are shocking and most unwelcome. And I think I'm in a welcome change. I'm not shocked by it, and I'm totally inviting it in. And I know not all of you are in that. Your change might be one that's more a time of transition that's causing heart searching and confusion. Even when the change is desired and welcome, we feel that way. It's even harder when it's not. Part of me knows the old way has gone, and part of me fears the new. That's the message we all get when we have split emotions and split loyalties and split identities showing up, which I find is happening more than we talk about, more than we know how to talk about with our friends and our loved ones, but we're really going through this. It doesn't matter if you're going through a time of transition when you need to let go of one part of your life in order to embrace another, whether that's like going through a divorce or dating somebody new, whether that's becoming a mother, whether that's leaving your corporate job to start your own mission and purposeful work, whether that's simply moving houses, or whether that's letting go of your bad eating behaviors. There's so many times when change is initiated in our lives and when we have to transition. And this is why I love coaching and why I'm so grateful to have studied NLP and to share these techniques with you, because they're amazing, fabulous resources to help you go through times of transition when you need to let go of one part and replace it with another. And in coaching and as a coach, I understand the value of a safe bridging space and a supportive place with a competent professional like myself, or if you hire a coach, or if you yourself are trained, then you know how to explore dilemmas and experiment with new approaches and make adjustments so that you can have a space of comfort and where you can feel acknowledged and respected for your whole self without having to have all the answers, letting yourself go through transition. So the first thing we have to do together on our walk today is build on our past experiences. We're usually not aware when we've been through a transition until we find that we've reached the other side and we're able to look back and see how we grew and changed. So it's amazing that we're bringing consciousness right now to the fact that we're even going through a transition, that we're in a time of transition. And what I like to do in this time is really pay attention to our natural ability to make the most of knowledge that we've already gained from earlier transitions and apply them to what we're currently going through or in the future when you're going to go through a transition. So you kind of start by just thinking about events in your life that you consider transitions already. So I know you've gone through a transition. If you're human, you've been through a transition in your life already. And just telling yourself and remembering that you've survived one brings a lot of peace and bridges the gap of where you are now. Transitions can include anything, like things at home, like going to school or studying something new, or shifting from your teenage years into adulthood, or learning how to drive, or leaving home, or moving a new state, or getting married, or having children, or changing partners or spouses, or losing a loved one. These are all the biggest transitions I noted, and I want you to think about that as we're talking about this. What are the transitions you've been through? I've left a corporate job to go to musical theater school and become a starving artist. I moved from California all the way across the country to New York. I went from being a lone warrior to falling in love in the city and getting engaged and married to my soul partner. I went from then being a struggling artist and even a successful performer to leaving that career to become an entrepreneur and a life coach. And then I transitioned from being a life coach to running a training school for other coaches, and now being a business and leadership coach for women to have integrated feminine business models. I went from my whole life, my career being my baby, to actually having a baby and becoming a mom. And I went from being, well, here I am. I went from being goal-focused. I'm going from being goal-focused to a more simple, in-the-moment, pleasureful experience. And so now we want to think about, for each experience we've had already, asking ourselves these questions. So I'm going to ask you, did you plan for those experiences? Did you plan for each of those transitions? Did you recognize it as a transition at the time? And how did you experience it? And how did you adjust to the new situation? So I think you can think about those 4 questions for each time in your life where you went through transition to help you process. Did you plan for it? Did you recognize you were going through a transition? How did you experience the transition? And how did you adjust to the new situation? And when I look at mine, I think it was pretty similar for all of them. I didn't necessarily plan, but I knew it was coming. I didn't fully know about transitions at the time, was definitely not as conscious as I am now. Not until I think switching my career to become my career being my baby to becoming a mommy, I was conscious and an expert coach at that stage. So that's when I started noticing and relating to transitions differently. And I experienced it consciously and by supporting myself and getting support from others. And I adjusted to the new situation with a lot of self-honoring, a lot of facing the challenge and feeling the emotions. And earlier, I would say, wasn't the same. And so then we want to move next into creating a summary of what we've discovered about ourselves from the earlier transitions. So we want to pay particular attention to, and if necessary, get some support in being guided to identify what or who supported us and what or who held us back, because that can help us now. And so it feels like for me, I really always had a coach and a sisterhood. In the times where transitions felt more conscious and graceful and easy, I had sisterhood and I had hired support to move through those transitions. And I also supported myself in the way of really slowing down and giving space for reflection and space to feel and lots of conversation, which I'm doing in this podcast with you. And what held me back was trying to hold on to the old way. So good to hear this. And trying to power through, or when I didn't give myself time to think about it and process and recognize it as a transition. So think about that for yourself. What do you need to pay attention to? What supported you and what held you back? And then now we can really encourage each other and hold each other to identifying what we need to remind ourselves of right now to make this easier. Like that could be asking for help from someone, or increasing our sleep, or building up more financial support, or learning new skills. Think about what you need. And for me, what's coming to mind is I'm still not giving myself enough space to be supported in the actions. And I can feel myself guiding to that. I think that's where I'm getting. And I think after this episode, there's some conversations that I need to have with people in my life that are just a little more open and vulnerable and specific about what support I need. And then the final thing I would do is plan. I would plan this with you and really keep on track when challenges arise. So some of the suggestions that I have for you and myself that are coming up through this, and what I would kind of move into next with a client, is really just making sure that we are taking time to recharge alone and finding space to escape and take a breather from like the rough and tumble of everyday life, which is totally what we're doing right now together and will continue doing with this Walk With Me series. And finally, we want to integrate the conflicting parts. NLP coaching assumes that all behaviors have a positive intent. So when we're working on changing our behavior, we have to recognize the positive side of the things that we want to change. And parts integration are working on activities by honoring and keeping the positives and finding the common ground between the separate parts. So, this is an exercise that we can use to close out creating that bridge of comfort for ourselves as we're navigating change in our lives together. So we want to, help ourselves to, since we have these two parts that we talked about that are in conflict with each other, and remember what those are for you, we want to chunk each part to a higher level of positive intention. And in this way, we can start to find the connection between those conflicting parts. So it's 4 steps, and they're pretty simple, but life-changing. And I did this exercise as I was prepping to come talk to you about it, and I feel so much better about those parts I mentioned earlier already. So the first part is clearly identify the 2 parts that are in conflict with each other. And you want to use your senses to give personality to each part. So turn each part into a character or an image or a symbol. I want you to consider each part in turn, finding a character or symbol that represents that part, and imagine placing the symbol on each one of your hands as we walk. So for example, I might imagine that this part of me, and I've done this with a coach. I hired a coach already to go through this with me, an NLP coach. I imagined part of the character I gave to that goal-oriented part of me. We call her the questioning light angel. And I envision her, and I have her in my right hand right now, like this beautiful, empowered woman who has the ability to pull up and out with angel wings of this human body, go up into the universe, look down on life, make plans, make manifestations, set goals, look at all the things that could happen along the way, and then I come back into my body and then power through to get to that end goal. And then the other part of me, the left hand, I call the trusting deep sea diver. This is the part of me that wants to dig deeper into the moment, to the dark and craggy landscapes, to the mystery, to the feeling of the experience right now. That even though there's a whole nother world under the ocean, in the depths of the sea, and there's so much to be explored there that would be missed if we didn't take the time to recognize it exists. And so this trusting deep sea diver is the part of me that wants to be living life in the moment, exploring all the edges, finding the pleasure, not afraid of the darkness, but trusting. And so the second part of this exercise, so put your parts in each hand. What is the character or the symbol or the image that you would place in your right hand for one part and your left hand for the other? And then we want to find the positive intention of each part as separate from the behavior. So start with the part that seems problematic and really I want to ask you to what is the positive intention of this part of you? What does it want for you? And really note your own responses. And you can share this with me if you want to. Below the episode, there's a link to the blog where I connect with all women around the world that are going on these walks. And if you want some extra coaching and support, I'll stop by and check those comments. So comment if you want, or just do this for yourself. What's the positive intention of this part of you? What does it want for you? And with each answer that comes up, chunk it up to higher positive intention by noticing when you have that, what will it do for you? So like this questioning light angel just wants me to prepare and use my time wisely and know that my actions and choices, when they're thoughtful and when they look ahead, can get me to higher goals. It wants me to have a life of legacy. It wants me to do my soul work while I'm here. She wants me to be able to accomplish huge things. And she wants me to be able to handle the journey of those things without getting too stuck in it, so that I can create massive results for myself and other people. And this trusting deep sea diver wants me to stop living life trying to get somewhere, and wants me to slow down and enjoy every moment of the journey, and wants me to experience the pleasure of the things that I create, and wants me to notice the gifts in the moment, and wants me to stop living for a destination and a goal or something later, and start learning to be present fully in all the gifts of life and what it has to offer. And this part of me wants to enjoy the quickness of motherhood and the gifts of these children that I'm connected to, and the moments in our life that will shape us along the way. And this time is so tender and sacred, and so much to be experienced and felt. It really makes me emotional, actually, thinking about that. It's so vital and important to me right now. So, keep yourself to going higher and higher until you reach that concept, or you come up with those core values, that those things you want, like I just mentioned, that both of these parts of yourself are getting to, and maybe you start to see the part of alignment. So now we want to invite each part to inform the other of its positive intention. So I want to encourage you to take these two characters or symbols and let them look at each other and talk to each other, and let the characters kind of share with one another what they need. So it's like my questioning light angel is telling the trusting deep sea diver, but have intention and have a greater vision in mind, because you're capable of having and achieving a lot that the world needs. And when you keep that vision in alignment, your daily focuses will help yield a powerful result that's intentional, and you are in the driver's seat. And the trusting deep sea diver is saying, I hear you, and sometimes the best intentions arise from being in the moment, and we don't always have to be growth focused, and it's not always about the outcome. So I hear her saying, I'll keep in mind your vision, but be flexible that another one might emerge, and I'll trust in the moment that deeper guidance, and I can manifest in the moment instead of having to leave the moment to power through. Manifestation doesn't have to be about, okay, let me feel into her. Manifestation doesn't have to be about later. It's already within you, and it's instantaneous, and it's shiftable and changeable. Okay, so that's what's coming through. And I'm going to play with this a little more. I'm going to keep letting this be part of my journey, letting these two talk to each other. And then our goal, the final step of this NLP technique, is to have each part notice that they're part of a larger whole, and to share the same higher level intention. And what is that higher level intention? Like, is it having fun or feeling secure, or what is it? And so I think what I hear from both of them is the higher intention is to truly get the most out of this life and to have a really beautiful, full experience. And the greater intention that they share is that no part gets lost, and that basically I'm conscious. That's what it is, consciousness. So it feels so good to notice that they can work together and that there's one greater shift that's happening. So I hope in this exercise on our walk today, you've been able to find that too, and you can soften into that so you can, bridge the gap in this time of transition and the behaviors that are changing, the daily actions that are changing, the way your identity is changing, that we can feel more peace and ease, and let this be an invitation for all future transitions, that we know how to do this, that we can identify it, that we remember we've done it before, that we remember that we can feel good and choose a path of spirit, and to remember these conflicting parts can connect and create a higher intention. Thank you for walking with me today. I look forward to next week. I also invite you to come and share your pictures with me on my Instagram, Jeannine.Yoder, of your walk, or to come over to the blog on JeannineYoder.com and share any insights that came up, or send me an email or a text if we are friends. And I love you, and I'm walking with you at this time in your life through transition, and there are many resources that can support us. So if you loved this episode, make sure you subscribe so you'll get another one next week, and leave a review so that other people can find this podcast who need it and who are called to walk beside us. And I look forward to seeing you next week, talking to you next week, and going even deeper. Bye for now.